He was the two-time governor of a border state, former U.S. ambassador to the UN. Bill Richardson joins us with candid comments on immigration, international turmoil, and the lay of the U.S. political landscape. All next on Politicking. Welcome to Politicking. I'm Larry King. With all that's happening in the world today and in the United States, there are few people better qualified to assess these issues than my old friend, our guest, Bill Richardson, who served 2 terms as Democratic governor of New Mexico, as U.S. ambassador to the UN, and was also Secretary of Energy in the Clinton administration. He's currently chairman of APCO Worldwide's Global Political Strategies Group, and he joins me from Washington. Bill, I think for over 30 years, you and I have been talking about the Middle East, and now we have another tremendous controversy going on. Israel now agrees to a humanitarian pause in the airstrikes after those 4 children, terrible tragedy, were killed in Gaza. Over 200 Palestinians have been killed, 1 Israeli. Hamas declines a Egyptian offer. What's your assessment of all of this?
Well, the good news, Larry, in this turmoil, in this tragedy, is that Egypt is stepping up and playing the role of a mediator as it did before, trying to be moderate, trying to be helpful to a potential ceasefire, peace process. That's one good point. The second good point is that actually the military operations of Israel, I think, have brought Hamas to some kind of bargaining table position. I think the initial offer that Hamas put out was really unacceptable, their conditions for a ceasefire. But, you know, Larry, the whole region is in turmoil. We've got the situation in Syria. What we don't want is this turmoil to accelerate, for this Israeli-Hamas dispute to become regional, to bring Lebanon, to bring Syria in, to bring Iran in. I think this is a test also of Iran wanting to make sure, we should want to make sure that Iran doesn't mess around and keeps helping the Hamases of the world. But it's a very tense situation. But I think, if anything, Israel and Egypt have been the good actors in this situation, which is very tragic.
But after those 3 Israeli lads were killed, did Israel overreact, turning this killing of 3 into a wholesale almost war?
Well, you know, I think, Larry, Israel has to defend itself. I'm not justifying what they did, obviously. But, you know, this is a country that is in a state of siege. The Hamas is a terrorist organization that wants to see Israel destroyed. They've launched these deadly missiles, Hamas has, and Israel, I think, had to respond. Now, obviously, what is needed more than anything is a ceasefire. Before any peace negotiations proceed, we need a ceasefire, and I think Israel is ready to take those steps. They did when Egypt made their first proposal. Now they're saying they're ready for a humanitarian ceasefire. I think Hamas has to follow suit.
You're ambassador at the UN. What's happening at the UN right now? They did propose that Israeli humanitarianly stop, and Israel agreed to that. What's going on at the UN? What's their role here?
Well, their role really in the past, Larry, the United States and other major powers involved in peacemaking in the Middle East have kept the UN out of this situation because, as you know, in the General Assembly, so many countries are biased against Israel. Their votes, I remember being UN ambassador, 185 to 3 against Israel. What the UN can do is, in the UN Security Council, Russia, China, the US, France, and England can moderate some kind of peace. But if China and Russia, that have sided decidedly with the Palestinians, they would probably veto anything constructive from the UN. So it's really here the 2 main players are the United States. We have influence from both sides, and Egypt. And that's the good news, that Egypt is stepping up as a mediator in pushing for this ceasefire. They're a major player.
What does Obama do, and is he doing enough?
Well, yes, I think what the president has done and what Secretary Kerry have done is basically said, look, we're backing the Egyptian mediation. We're ready to go back. I think Secretary Kerry was going to go back and try to bring both sides together. What we can do, Larry, is get the moderate Palestinians, the Palestinians that live on the West Bank, the Abbases of the world that have been saying the right thing on the ceasefire. In other words, enact a ceasefire, Hamas, and lean on Hamas. But most importantly, I think this is another role that Iran can play. We should say to Iran, Britain, France, the other countries, look, you want a deal on enriched uranium with the West, you want sanctions lifted, help us with Hamas. Find a way to bring a ceasefire. Stop this killing.
We'll be right back with former UN Ambassador Bill Richardson. Don't go away. I remember, I go back, I don't know how many years ago, when you were the ambassador to the UN and we were CNN, I was in New York, and you were on and the Iranian ambassador was on. The two of you couldn't be in the same room together. You had to go out through one door, he came in through another door. When is this ever going to end? Why is the Middle East the Middle East?
Because, Larry, there's so many ethnic and tribal and all kinds of divisions. They're not just country by country. They're ethnic. They're you know, the Shias, the Shiites, the Sunnis, the Kurds, Hamas. There's so much hatred there. I think there's got to be a way for the Arab Spring to, through social media, to lift all boats, to be the agent of democracy and to stop these killings. Now, I think that the Pope can play an important role in the Middle East.
He can?
I think that we need new players that bring some kind of mediating and conflict resolution. But with Iran, you know, I wouldn't throw up our hands. There may be an opportunity for an enriched uranium deal. I'm skeptical, but it's not over yet.
How's our country doing in all of this, say, compared to when George W. Bush left office? Are we better? Are we safer now? How do you assess security?
Well, I would say, Larry, that security is better, although I think President Bush, George W. Bush, did a good job on security. He did a good job after 9/11. But I think what's different now is we around the world are not looked upon anymore as bullies, as going it alone. We've built some alliances, but this is a very challenging time with Ukraine, with North Korea, with the Middle East, with Iraq erupting. You know, the President Obama, has been dealt some very difficult cards, and I would say he's handled them well. I think on Syria, when he said that he was proceeding with that red line, I would have moved forward with some of those strategic bombings, but it didn't happen. But at the same time, I think our relationship with our allies is stronger, and he's doing the best he can, but in a way that brings other countries in to help us. But it's a very difficult period, the most difficult in international politics that I'd ever seen, and I'm sure that you've seen.
The most, yeah. You totally supported the removal of all troops from Iraq. Still say that was the right move?
I do, because I think this was an American public that was tired of Iraq and Afghanistan. I think President Obama was elected on bringing our troops home, taking care of our veterans, investing domestically in education. And I do think that invasion in the first place was a mistake. That doesn't mean that you wash your hands and not take responsibility. You know, we invested over 3,500 of our young men and women, $1 trillion. So that doesn't mean we leave troops behind. I don't think we should, but I think we should help with reconstruction. We should find a way to bring the Kurds, the Shias, the Sunnis closer together. I really think the Prime Minister of Iraq, Larry, Maliki, has really botched the situation by not being inclusive with the other ethnic groups in Iraq. I think it would be in our interests if he leave office and a more moderate, inclusive Prime Minister come in. So I think we have a responsibility to try to bring some kind of these terrorists that are out there only want to do everybody harm. And they're in Syria, they're in Iraq. But we have a peacemaking, a diplomatic responsibility. But that's where we need Iran, that's where we need Russia, we need China, and that's where I think we need the United Nations more active.
What's the future of Iraq, do you think?
I think it's going to happen, interestingly, what Vice President Biden once said 8 years ago, and I remember being in the presidential campaign, we said this is never going to happen. But he said there's probably going to be 3 Iraqi states, a Kurdish state, a Sunni, and a Shia. The way things are going, Larry, I think that's a very, very possible outcome.
We're going to talk about immigration and the crisis along the U.S. southern border, what Governor Richardson meant when he said that he's not in the ready for Hillary camp, when we come back. We're back with Bill Richardson, old friend and a great public servant. He served 2 terms as Democratic governor of New Mexico, served as U.S. ambassador to the UN during the Clinton administration, was also Secretary of Energy. What do you make of this huge influx of 50,000 from Honduras, Guatemala, El Salvador children coming into the United States? How are we doing with that?
Well, not well. And the reason we're not doing well is the Congress and the executive branch can't agree on how to handle it. The atmosphere, Larry, has really gotten partisan. We need you to come back and try to bring both parties together because everybody likes you. But the problem is that there is total gridlock in the Congress. What needs to happen is several things. One, I think the president should be given more authority to deal with some of the deportations, clear lines of authority, not necessarily maybe changing the law, but some executive authority. But in return, the president needs to get what he's asked for, which is more immigration judges, more detention centers, more hospital and medical treatment for these people. But also, Larry, tell our friends in Central America, El Salvador, Guatemala, Honduras, to stop doing this, or we're going to cut their aid off. You know, we're giving them assistance to stop this, but this is a humanitarian crisis. I was a border governor. This, you know, happened in New Mexico, not from Central America, but there's a lot of traffickers and bad people, smugglers that bring these women and children in. They bring drugs in, and we've got to find a solution. But it looks like there may be a deal with the Congress the White House makes. I think they need to make one fairly soon because we're talking about 50,000 kids. We're talking about services in the various 4 border states really having enormous problems.
The Republicans say that Obama technically caused this. Do you agree with that?
No, that's not true. The problem is that the Tea Party side of the Republican Party, instead of trying to find a way to work with moderates in the Republican Party, like McCain, like even President George W. Bush, like Speaker Boehner, they said, we don't want any immigration reform, period. And what is needed is, one, more funding for border security and technology. We need to do that. Secondly, a legal path for the 11 million, legal path to citizenship. Let them stay after they pay back taxes, learn English, a number of conditions. And then stronger reunification procedures that involve, Larry, something that a lot of people don't talk about. We need to have more H-1B visas of skilled immigrants be allowed in. You know, this reduces the deficit, creates jobs. There are a lot of skilled immigrants, PhDs, that want to stay here, that contribute to science, technology, a lot of jobs, but they can't stay here. And there's a provision in the House bill drafted by a Republican that makes the cap a lot easier for these skilled immigrants to stay in the United States.
Would you characterize the southern border as secure, as Congressman Gutierrez says it is? Others say it's broken.
The immigration system is broken. The border is more secure than it has been because this administration and the Congress have put more border guards. They've put more technology, more drones, more law enforcement at the border, but it's still a problem. And interestingly, Mexico has cooperated with us in this Central American humanitarian crisis. So it takes more diplomacy also for this to happen. Now, there are a lot of congressmen that are saying, you know, this is bringing Ebola diseases, viruses that are the current Central American crisis. That's just flat wrong. But what has come across is more bad people, more traffickers and smugglers. I would concentrate more on stopping those that actually what they've done, Larry, is they've taken advantage of a loophole passed in the Bush administration, which was the right thing to do to help young kids not be victims of sexual trafficking at the border. But they took advantage of this loophole that allowed these kids to stay in detention centers and be processed over a certain period of time.
In January last year, you wrote a piece for CNN.com. You said the stars may be finally aligning for a comprehensive immigration overhaul. Were you wrong?
Yeah, I thought it would happen. I thought the Republican Party the moderates would win, but I was wrong. I just think it's too late now. Now, maybe they'll give it a shot next year, maybe after the elections. The Republicans have to be very careful. They don't want to lose the millions of new Hispanic voters that are going to be determining presidential elections and congressional seats. And right now, I mean, you take the city where you are, Los Angeles, California, this is a state that pretty soon will be a majority Hispanic state. And that's a trend around the country. So I think Republicans have to be very careful about appearing to be against comprehensive immigration reform in the long run.
More with former Governor Richardson right after this. What do you make of Speaker John Boehner's push to sue Obama over overstepping the limits of executive authority?
Oh, it's politics. It's the wrong thing to do. You know, I know Speaker Boehner. I served in the Congress with him. He's a good guy. And I think he generally tries to do the right thing, but this is his Tea Party majority that is pushing him to do these very nonsensical acts that have no foundation. There's no basis for impeachment. You don't impeach a president because you disagree with him. And that's what's happening. It's not going to go anywhere. I think it's internal House politics, that's all.
Where do you think the election is going to go midterm? Can the Republicans take the Senate back?
No, but I think we will lose 1 or 2 Senate seats, but I think the Democrats will win and will keep control of the Senate. The House maybe will change a little bit either way. Larry, I don't think it's over. I think right now I see all these polls that Republicans may have an advantage, but you know, this election is 5 months away. A lot can happen in those 5 months. But right now I do think we will retain the Democrats' control of the Senate.
Your assessment of Obama's presidency?
He's been a good president internationally. He's been domestically, he's been stymied by partisanship, but I give him high marks for his Affordable Care Act. I give him high marks for getting us out of the economic mess at the start of his administration. I give him high marks for his leadership on social issues like same-sex marriage. I think he's been a good president. He's been dealt a very tough blow by partisanship, but he's still got 2 years to go. I don't think the final chapters of his legacy are completed yet.
In the campaign 6 years ago, you endorsed the President Obama. You recently told the Washington Post that the differences because of that endorsement have not healed, and you're not in the suck-up camp for Hillary yet. How bad is that cleavage?
Well, it's not good. I mean, I had a very high regard for both Clintons. And, you know, when I endorsed President Obama, they weren't happy, and I understand that. And I tried to explain this to them. I tried to meet with them. They weren't interested. I still have a lot of respect for both. But I was simply stating, Larry, that I'm not one of these that feel that I have to suck up to anybody. I want to see who the candidates are. I think there should be open competition. I know Hillary Clinton is a formidable candidate. It's not that I won't ever be there, but right now, I'm not one of those hundreds of Democrats flocking and saying the race is over. You know, I think we still have a couple of years to go. And instead of worrying about the presidential race, we should worry about this year, keeping the House, keeping the Senate, and protecting our flanks in the House instead of worrying about 2016 and the presidency.
If she is the candidate, though, you would support her, right?
Yes, I would. Yeah, if she's the nominee, I would support her. And, you know, maybe if when she unveils her platform, her vision for the country, I might also support her. I'm not going to let this breach that we had stand in that way. But I'm also not going to, like, go after her and say, hey, I want to be on your team. No, I like many other voters, I'd like to, you know, be convinced about her plans and vision for the country.
Does Bill Clinton, does he not forgive?
Well, he's still mad at me. You know, he's had differences with some of his former staffers, but well, so far he hasn't forgiven me, I'll be honest. I still have a lot of affection for him. You know, I served under him. He was good to me. I was good to him. I served him well. But, you know, in politics, Larry, you know, you sometimes have these breaches, and it takes time to heal. This one has been unusually long, but if he wishes to keep it separate and in a breach, so be it. I'm not uncomfortable. I'm not begging. I'm fine. I'm happy.
Your state has supported same-sex marriage, the 17th state to do so. Do you support it?
Yes. Actually, you know, when I was governor, Larry, we made it a lot easier for the state in dealing with transgender, gay, gave them a lot of benefits in the area of civil rights, housing, insurance, et cetera. We're quite not yet same-sex marriage. A lot of counties have done it individually, but my hope is that the state moves in that direction with a comprehensive effort in the New Mexico legislature or by some other means.
How about the legalization of marijuana?
No, you know, as governor, I brought in medical marijuana. I think for medicinal, for health purposes, properly regulated makes sense. But legalization of marijuana, I want to see how Colorado handles it, Washington State. I think they're moving in the right direction. But, you know, I want to be able to see that legalization is not of marijuana. I would only possibly consider decriminalizing it. But, you know, cocaine, other drugs, I'm not ready for that. I want law enforcement to be comfortable with a solution. And, you know, they don't want to change the law. Police officers, those on the front lines. But I think clearly the country is moving. And I accept that, and I want to see what happens, what medical information there is on the potential health risks, and I'll be very open on it.
By the way, you look great. How much weight have you lost?
Well, I had back surgery and I was carrying too much weight. I've lost about 40 pounds, but thank you for the compliment. I'm trying to look skinny and handsome like you.
You look terrific. I look forward to when we can get together again and break bread.
Thank you, Larry. It's
Thanks.
always great to be on your show.
My pleasure. Governor Bill Richardson, thanks for your time today, and also my thanks to you for joining me on Politicking. Remember, I want to hear from you. You can join the conversation on my Facebook page, share your thoughts on Twitter by tweeting at King's Things and using the Politicking hashtag. That's all for this week's Politicking.